Hi, hello, my name's Sam Harrison. I read, review, and discuss fantasy and science fiction books. Today we have another discussion video, and this one is about how I rate and review books and kind of talking a little bit about Goodreads as well. So let's start off with talking about Goodreads. So I use Goodreads as a platform primarily to track what I have read, what I want to read, and the scores that I give books. I try to remember, especially with indie books, to go in and write a full review because I know that reviews are really important for indie books. Like, at the end of the day, I feel like my video reviews for something like Wheel of Time are probably more useful to most people. But if you're the kind of person who is browsing Goodreads and you're looking for like a new indie fantasy, then, like Blood Rain, for example, it's probably more useful for me to put in a couple of sentences that kind of sum up my video review than a link, rather than before I would probably just put the score in. But especially with something like Blood Rain, where I gave it a 3 out of 5, I wanted to be very clear about why I did that. And it's interesting because, right, a 3 out of 5 to me is pretty good. Like, if you said to me that a movie was a 3 out of 5, I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, it was probably good. Like, movies seem to use, like, movies of all kind of media, movies seem to be the only one that use the whole scale. So you'll see a movie like Madam Web, for example, will be a 1 star. You'll see a movie like Past Lives or Oppenheimer will be a 5 star. And then you'll see movies like, so I saw Argyle last year, right? And I didn't hate the movie. I thought it was good, but that it had quite a few flaws. And that ended up being a 2 star for me. But if I was reading a book that was good, but had quite a few flaws, I would be very wary of rating that book as a 2 star, because if you look at Goodreads, any book that is under a 3 star of kind of the average is like actively a terrible bad book. So most people, if you look at reviews, most people, I mean, there are obviously the outliers. There are people who will rate a book 1 star and go, this book was good, but, like, I've seen this on people reacting to 1 star reviews. So let me know if you'd be interested in one of those videos from me, by the way. They do look fun to make. I haven't had time to get around to one yet. But like, reacting to a 1 star review of my favorite books could be funny. But so if you look at most Goodreads users, most of them don't read, but they don't give a text review. They just give a score. And most people are like 5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5. Like, if you look across the gamut, that's pretty much what it's like. And I don't want to review using the full scale, for example, because I know that I know what my metric is in my head when I think about movies, and I often think about that rating as it applies to other media. But with books, it's actually quite hard to use that, because that's not what everyone else is using. So if you look at video games, for example, a 7 out of 10 is often a sign that a game is quite flawed. Whereas if you gave a book, not even a book actually, so 7 out of 10 is like, a 7 out of 10 in video game world is like the lowest a good game can score. But there's 1 to 6 fully available for there to be used. But the whole video game industry is basically like, anything below a 7 is a bad game. And I think that with books, we're in the same situation where I would say anything below a 3.5, 3 is like an actively bad book. So where I could rate Argyle as a 2 star for a film that is good but quite flawed, not good, in fact, that I had fun watching but is quite flawed, I couldn't do that for a book that I read. I couldn't give a book 2 stars because I'm not rating the same as the rest of the platform. And I have to rate on the grade of the platform, because otherwise I'm bringing the average down unfairly. So that's why I want to talk about my rating system, because I was thinking about this a lot, and I think about this a lot with Blood Rain, because if Blood Rain had been a kind of universally graded, so if I was grading it in a vacuum, for example, I might have said that this was a 2 to 3 star, simply because I want to tell you guys that the book is enjoyable. It is not a bad book. I would say that a 1-star book is a bad book, or a kind of an objectionable book, but it's not a bad book. It was better than 1 star. There were some flaws, and it's very clearly, that first novel. It's better than any novel I've written, but it is, it's that first novel. So you want that room to grow, room to go up. But if you look at the Goodreads page for a lot of these books, the review average is like 4.2 or something, and you're like, if I give this how I would have rated Argyle, 2 out of 5, then that would legitimately bring the average down. And I don't want to be responsible for bringing down an average because everyone is grading on a different curve to me. You have to grade on the same curve when you're using a platform like Goodreads. Otherwise, you're just not being fair to the authors. I don't want to be like, my Goodreads score is 4 out of 5, but my SAM score is like 2.2 out of 10 or something. Like, I want to be honest with you guys and explain how my reviewing metric matches up to Goodreads and how I review books. And so that's what we're here for today. So that's kind of my kind of rant discussion on how Goodreads works. Let's talk now. I've got my notes here. I've written some notes down before. So a 1 out of 5. A 1 out of 5 book is not good fundamentally, and I cannot see why other people would like it. I think that's probably the most succinct way I can say that. It would have major errors, or it would be hard to read because it was so poorly written. And I don't, with many of these scores, I'm like, this is not for me at all, but I can see why someone else might think it was like a 3 or 4 out of 5, But for a 1 out of 5, that has to be for me that I just cannot see why someone else would like it. If I'm rating a book 1 out of 5, I should have DNF'd it, and I should have DNF'd it very early. I would not rate a book that I DNF'd. I don't think it's fair to rate a book without reading the whole thing. But if I'm reading a 1 out of 5, that's a very clear sign I should have DNF'd it very, very early on. And if I finished that book, that's more on me than on the author. If you know what I mean, I've wasted my time by choice. I just fundamentally poor book. That's kind of how I would rate it as a 1 out of 5. A 2 out of 5 is a book that is technically good, so is not poorly written, but is categorically not for me. So there are many times when I've read a book and I've been like, I could see why someone else might see this as a 3 out of 5. Or might see that, this might be a book that is like very middle of the pack for someone else. But for me and my sensibilities and my reading style, I have to give this a 2 out of 5 because it just isn't for me. And reviews are personal. I'm not trying to give an objective rating. I'm trying to give you guys an idea of how I feel about a book. So it's feelings, it's biased, it's not objective. So a 2 out of 5 is something that, as I was saying, technically fine, no issues with how it's written. Just often the writing style is not for me. That's usually where a 2 out of 5 will come at me. But it could also have plot elements that I really don't like. It could have maybe some political stuff that I object to. Or it could just make poor choices with characters or plots that I don't agree with, or don't like, or didn't enjoy to read. So I should also be DNFing books that are 2 out of 5. In my opinion, if a book is a 2 out of 5, I probably should have DNF'd it much earlier on. I have read 2 books that I think I would rate 2 out of 5 since I got back into reading, which is Curse of the Mistwraith and Fated by Benedict Jacker. I think both of those books are books that people who are really into those books will love. And the reason that I finished Curse of the Mistwraith, even though I was really, really struggling with it, is because there were parts where I wasn't struggling, where I was loving it. And so I was kind of hoping for that to come back around. And then it came back a little bit, but never really as much as I wanted. So that's kind of how I see a 2 out of 5, is that a book that I think someone else would like, or maybe even someone would love, but was just categorically not for me, and I should have DNF'd it. Oftentimes this is, as I said, prose style is a big one for me. I have my likes and dislikes when it comes to prose. I like that more kind of easy, open, accessible prose. So that's why I tend to see books that are a bit more flowery, a bit more purple, get the 2 out of 5s. 3 out of 5. A 3 out of 5 is a good book. I could see it being an absolute favourite for somebody else. It wasn't exactly my cup of tea. It wasn't exactly down up my alley, as it were. It's kind of a step to the left that I didn't enjoy. So often I quite like being pushed out of my comfort zone with books. So I like a book that has horror elements, for example, like The Emperor of the Wolf. Even though I'm not a big horror guy, the horror elements in Empire of the Wolf kind of push me out of my comfort zone. Sometimes I feel like I am pushed out of my comfort zone in a way that I do not enjoy. And those books, those often end up being a 3 out of 5. These aren't a categorical I should have DNF'd this book. If it's a 3 out of 5, I would probably finish a lot of 3 out of 5s, although should I? I don't know. I do like to finish books if I can. A 3 out of 5 book is a book that I am mostly enjoying as well, but it might be difficult to read. It might be a bit more of a slog. I think, a 3 out of 5 is kind of not my cup of tea. Maybe pushed me out of my comfort zone in a way I didn't enjoy. But a 3 out of 5 is one that I would say, if you're listening to the review and the way that I'm talking about the book, and this is like lighting your fire, it's intriguing you, then a 3 out of 5 is essentially a big recommendation for anyone who it feels like that book should be their jam. So, if it sounds like your bag, a 3 out of 5 from me means you should probably seek it out. A 4 out of 5. So a 4 out of 5 is a book that is very good. Is very, very good. It is a book that I think other people should read. But I've talked a few times in the past that 5-star books are books that I feel like have what I've called the 5-star tingle. Give me the 5-star tingle. When I'm reading a really excellent book, I'll often get like goosebumps because I'm enjoying it so much, because I'm like so immersed, because it's so well written. And if I do kind of need that little push to make it 5 stars. So it's either that a 4 out of 5 book is a book that is very, very good, that I'd recommend to most people, but is missing that little something, that little 5-star tingle, or in some cases it can have a slower or a weaker section which brings down the book. So Morning Star was very much like this, the Last Red Rising book. There were 2 sections of that book that I felt really brought down the book overall and could have just been excised. And for me, that kind of brought down the score for that book. However, it's still a good book that I would recommend to most people. Hopefully that makes sense. The 5-star magic, the 5-star tingle, 5 out of 5. So I'm rating a book as 5 out of 5 if it is pretty much 100% of the way a good book, that there are no glaring flaws. I might rate a book 5 out of 5 that I still had like I wish they hadn't done XYZ, but what they ended up doing was good. So that's a good example for a 5 out of 5 that has an objectionable element. Can't think of one, to be honest, right now. Almost kind of thinking about some of the Stormlight books have been 5 out of 5, but have had sections where I'm like, oh, this character could do with speeding this up or moving this along. Words of Radiance is a 5 out of 5 book. It's an excellent book, but the section with Shallan and Tin near the beginning of the book I didn't like, and I kind of wished that things could have been sped along. So that's an example of a 5-star book where I was like, I wish this section could have been sped along, but overall I still loved it, and I got that 5-star feeling. I think it's a fantastic book. There are many... So, a 5-star book does not have to be perfect. A 5-star book isn't like a 10 out of 10 for me. Like, a 5-star book is more me saying, this is really good, has no glaring faults, and is an unequivocal recommend to pretty much anyone. I might not recommend something like Stormlight Archive for people who don't like long books, but realistically, I would say most of my 5 out of 5 reviews are books that I think everyone should read. 6 out of 5. A 6 out of 5 is Of War and Ruin by Ryan Cahill. That's the only criteria. I've only ever wanted to rate one book 6 out of 5. It's Of War and Ruin by Ryan Cahill. I think it's one of the best books I've ever read. I think it's definitely the best fantasy book I've ever read. I cannot wait to see where we go from here, but this video isn't about Ryan Cahill's Bound and the Broken series. It's about how I rate books. But now you know. So now you know what constitutes anything from my 1 to 5 to my 5 out of 5, and the mythical, kind of a joke, 6 out of 5 that I wanted to give to Of War and Ruin. So, let me know how you rate books. How do you feel about the Goodreads grading curve? I think, hopefully I have explained my philosophy and why I grade on the Goodreads curve, even though I would not do so on other platforms, like, for example, Letterboxd, or if I was rating a video game, when I'm writing a video game review, I would grade on that curve. It's something that I think is really important, grading on a curve, and I don't know whether I'm using that term correctly, but I'm going to continue to do so. Please do like this video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel. I'd love to see you guys become part of the book community. Over here, we're talking Wheel of Time, we're talking Bound and the Broken, we're reading Sun Eater, we're going to start the Powder Mage trilogy soon. So anything that you anything that you want to talk about, please come down in the comments and let's have a chat. And let me know how you rate books and how you see, how you think about my rating system. And I will speak to you tomorrow. Wait, don't go yet. I'm doing a charity drive for BCHC, the Birmingham Community Healthcare Charity. They are a charity attached to the Birmingham's kind of National Health Service, and what they do is they raise money for small little things that can help support patients and the families of patients, things like books, toys, toiletries. Also, they do big projects, like they have funded the creation of a playground for children with prosthetic limbs. Now, if you would like to support this charity, you can go to the link in the description for this video and donate some money to my charity appeal. I'd be really grateful if you do so. This is an absolutely fantastic charity. While they aren't local to me, the charity drive is run by a friend of mine, Stace, and I don't know about you, but I'm going to be reading as many books as possible in March anyway, so might as well use that to raise some money for a good cause. Please donate to the link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.